This is Donald Parham. You're listening to Chargers Unleashed, part of the LA Football Network. Stay jiggy.
Hey, this is Chris Rupp II, Chargers outside linebacker, and make sure you check out Chargers Unleashed.
Shout out to Chargers Unleashed, Sebastian Joseph Day, you know the vibes, we outside.
You checking in with Mike Williams from the LA Chargers, and you're tuning in to Chargers Unleashed.
You're listening to the Chargers Unleashed podcast with your host, Dan Wolkenstein and Jake Hefner.
Welcome to another edition of Chargers Unleashed. Jake Hefner and Dan Wolkenstein here with you from the LA Football Network. Today's show, of course, is being brought to you by BetOnline, Charger Bolt Family, and Rock Solid Sports Memorabilia. If this is your first time tuning into the show, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Dan Wolkenstein, it is March 27th. We are officially 1 month, 30 days, and counting from the NFL draft. It can't get here soon enough. And as Dan and I have done previously, it's been a minute since we have done one of these episodes. This is our last one that we did was our best fits for the Chargers for the wide receivers way before the combine. We're getting back in the thick of things with the prospect breakdowns, this time breaking down everything as it relates to the 2023 Edge class, what our best fits are from Dan and I's perspective, which are the best fits overall for the Chargers as we look at these prospects and break them down. So not necessarily top to bottom, 1 to 10, who is the best, but guys who we really feel are the best fits for the team as they go into it. And as far as this Edge class goes, it's top heavy, it's plentiful, and there is plenty of talent to find in this Edge class.
Yes, Jake's favorite wrestler is not Hulk Hogan, but it's Edge. I think we all knew that. Undertaker is no longer here. Now we're talking about Edge.
That's inaccurate. I'm a huge pro wrestling fan. Edge,
okay, who is it?
Well, I mean, I don't think I could pick just one, but if I had to lean a certain way,
yes.
One that I probably emulated a lot.
Favorite adjacent, who you picking?
I was big into the DX era, so Shawn Michaels was definitely up there. But Undertaker may have overtaken him.
Undertaker overtook him.
Undertaker overtook. Yes.
I will say, going back and looking, complete side tangent for a second, going back and looking at some old wrestling stuff, The Rock back in the day, would never stand a chance in today's era. He would have been canceled 37 times.
Yes. A lot of people would have been back in the Attitude Era.
Yes, but that's okay. Yes, we're talking all things edge position / defensive end. Best fits for the Los Angeles Chargers. We'll also talk about just a couple things we've heard over the weekend, just some thoughts that Jake and I have. Before that, Jake, over under how many edge players go in the top 10? I'm going to put the over under 2.5.
Oh, that's going over.
Over 2.5 in the first 10 picks.
Over 2.5 in the top 10. Yes. You almost made that too easy.
Who are your 3?
I don't want to give it away, but it's not the question.
Okay.
You asked me over
right,
2.5.
Over. All right.
I gave you the answer. Anyways, BetOnline, want to remind everybody, remains your number one source for all sports wagering information, featuring live betting free contests and giveaways all season long. Always the fastest and easiest way to bet on all of your favorite sports and events, whether that's NFL, NBA, NHL, MMA, tech, tennis, boxing, or even golf. So we want to remind everybody to head on over to betonline.ag to join and receive your 50% welcome bonus with your first deposit. Make sure to use that promo code BELIEVE. That's BLEAV to receive your rewards. BetOnline, where the game starts.
All right. So, Jake, I think one of the things that's important for us to kind of preface this, we talked a little bit about it during the wide receiver episode and we broke those down. We'll do a little bit now as we get to the edge position. What the Chargers are looking for in this draft, I think it needs to be called out specifically. Are the Chargers looking for edge 1? Are they looking for edge 2? Maybe future edge 2, but right now, you can put it that way. Yes. But right now they're looking for edge 3 at best, or edge 2 emergency break glass if needed, if one of your first 2 go down. So edge 3, or depth, if you will, for the edge position. If you're looking at tight end, which we're not talking about now, but if you're looking at tight end, Chargers are looking for either tight end 1, which would probably need to be picked in the first round. Because in my opinion, I don't think you're going to find any tight end at 54 that's better than what you already have with Gerald Everett. So either you're going for current tight end 1 hopeful or depth piece at tight end. Wide receiver, we all know you're looking for offensive weapons, probably wide receiver 3, maybe wide receiver 2 possibilities later. But just overall offensive weapons, it could be wide receiver 4 or 5, doesn't matter. CB probably 4, linebacker like 2, 3. So when we get into this, I think it's important to put the context of what we're actually looking for. So therefore, we can see how important it is to each of us that they go this position or that position early versus late. So, Jake, edge. We know how much the Chargers need this from a depth perspective. You look at what happened last year. Once Joey Bosa was down, this is a whole different movie and not a good one for the edge players specifically. Khalil Mack was holding it down. There's only so much Khalil Mack can do by himself when folks are keying off. And again, I talked about this early off in the offseason last year. The difference, the drop-off between Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa and the rest of the crew is drastic. That's what the Chargers have to fix. So if/when one of those guys goes down, goes out, needs a breather for a bit, they're not completely bottoming out. So with that being said, Jake and I are going to go through our 5 through 1. We're going to make sure that we do the best for last. 5 through 1 are the best fits for the Chargers. Again, these are not necessarily my 5 to 1 versus Jake's 5 to 1, but these are each of ours combined 5 to 1. We're going to give you guys 10 different players to hear about. And then we'll go into some honorable mentions as well at the end. Jake, so let's kick this off. Number 10, which I guess technically, if we're going to talk about it, my number 5 best fit for the Los Angeles Chargers comes from the Ohio State University. And this might be a surprise name to folks, but I don't think it should be. My number 5 is going to be none other than Zach Harrison from Ohio State. Now, you look at Zach Harrison for a second, and initially you're thinking, who? But once you start looking at this for a bit, it's kind of fun. 6'6", 272. Super athletic, long legs, can win both inside and outside, which I think is important for the Los Angeles Chargers because they're going for scheme fit specific. They need folks in Brandon Staley's scheme on defense that can kind of do both parts, in my opinion. Now, what I think is important about this selection for me is the thing I like most about him, Jake, is Brandon Staley talks about a lot the idea of finishing plays. And I can't tell you how many times I have seen him finishing plays with a nose for the football, strip sack machine. I think that's what gets me most excited about him is the potential of where he is. Now, again, his stats aren't crazy. This season, 5 quarterback hits, 6 tackles for a loss, 3.5 sacks. It's not mind-blowing. But I think in my eyes, you're kind of buying the athleticism, and the flashes. And what he can do, I think, is brilliant. Now, has he done a lot in college? No, I think this is more of a projection than it is of what you've seen in the past. But again, 6'5", 275 don't grow on trees. They just don't. Arm length over 36 inches, hand size 10 inch. I mean, I like him. Now, is he a little raw? Sure. But in my opinion, from a pure edge perspective, from a pure upside, Zach Harrison to me is a great fit. And I think what is important to call out here before I let you kind of go off on what you think of Zach Harrison, Jake, is for me, I think what's important to address is, in my opinion, there are 2 types of edge players or edge archetypes, if you will, that the Chargers are in need of, in my opinion. So you look at the, Morgan Foxes of the world, the previously Jerry Tillery of the world, the hybrids that can kind of play both edge and interior, or the big-sized defensive ends. That's one archetype that they need. But then they also need the bendy type. They need the Khalil Mack, they need Joey Bosa, they need the ones that can bend around the edge, go quickly. In my opinion, this is the latter. This is one who is probably not going to be playing much on the inside. outside, bend, athleticism, pin your ears back, go get the quarterback. You're on mute.
Gotta love it when technical difficulties interfere with your sentences. To piggyback off of what Dan was saying there about Zach Harrison, Dan, you mentioned the measurables for him. Dan, he also has the longest arms of any edge rusher in this class, 34 and a quarter. And he uses them well when he's getting after the pass rusher, that's for sure. Definitely has a motor that you can get behind as far as getting to the quarterback. I think just the one thing, when you mentioned just the raw traits of him, is that the motor and the pass rush is not as consistent as you'd want it. Doesn't necessarily play with that sense of urgency that you would like to see on a consistent basis. It shows up, trust me, it does show up certain times, but you'd like to see it happen a little bit more often. But I like his fit for especially if the Chargers are going, I know that they flip from time to time between a 4-3 and a 3-4 defensive end front before naturally more for a 4-3. I think he's a great fit for it. If you sit him back and strictly were to make him a third down pass rusher, I'm not sure how consistently he's going to be able to get there for you on year one. Mm-hmm. But as you had said, for long-term development, raw now, but he's a guy that I think that you could definitely develop and that he could turn into something good for this defense.
Yeah, and I preface this, I see him as kind of like a late day 2, early day 3-ish frame for me in terms of when he would possibly be gotten.
Yeah.
Jake, who is your number 5?
So my number 5 is going to be Michigan's Mike Morris. And again, you talk about freak athletic guys in this class. He has as much size as you could possibly ask for an edge rusher. And what I love about him the most, and why I think that one of the reasons that the fit for this could work so well, and I love, Dan, how you preface this whole conversation as far as what type of edge are the Chargers actually looking for. Mike Morris transitions into this perfectly because the versatility that Mike Morris brings to the game in terms of what he has had experience with playing along Michigan's defensive line, he hits all the boxes because he's essentially played all along the defensive line at Michigan, whether he's standing up, his hands are 2 feet in the dirt, you want him to rush from the inside, he can do that. And we also have to know, from Jerry Tillery departing, 2 of your interior defensive linemen also coming back off of injuries. We just heard, I think it was earlier today, that Joe Gaziano had gotten signed by another team. So we know that eventually the Chargers are going to be looking for some interior defensive line help. So if you could have someone who can not only contribute as an edge rusher, but contribute inside as well, that's all going to make these conversations about your draft stock essentially look a lot better. I love Mike Morris as a run defender for in this class. I think he's perfect. Sets the edge beautifully, plays with a lot of natural power, has the ability to knock the offensive lineman back. Is he the best pass rusher that you would want to see off the edge? Probably not. Probably still has a little bit more to develop in that game. But I think that his size is going to play so much for him. And again, his versatility. I've seen comparisons to Zach Allen, who used to formerly of the Cardinals. I think just his size, his mold, not necessarily his skill set, but his size and his mold fit that really well. And he could disrupt as it relates to the run. You give him enough time, much like in the way Zach Harrison was, Dan. Long term, you play the long game with Mike Morris. Now, I know that a lot of people are probably saying, Jake, what the hell are you talking about right now? As far as the Chargers need to win right now. I think you could probably get more contributions out of him quicker. Maybe if you put him inside.
Yeah,
and eventually, we're talking 2 years from now, you want to sit him outside and start having him rush the passer, giving me a little more time to hone those skills. That would probably be the route that I would go. But again, I like Mike Morris as far as his versatility. I think those are traits that Brandon Staley covets as it relates to his defense, much in the Morgan Fox type of a mold. And I think as far as a fit, whether it's short-term, long-term, and however you want to use him, you can find ways to plug him into this defense and get production out of him.
Yeah, Mike Morris, I'm not going to repeat most things you said, which I kind of had. I think the things for me that we did not discuss really that much, you mentioned the physicality, but like he's just a physical presence. I do see him being a very good fit for the Chargers' needs in terms of, you mentioned the versatility, but I think the Chargers are looking for that size and physicality presence in the middle that they just haven't had. And you notice it affecting them. I think he'll have way more impact early on against the run than he will against the pass, like you mentioned. I will say, though, he is a good against the run on the edge, which I'll take. Primarily, you see him standing up, so it kind of makes me think that he's going to be more on the edge. He's going to have to learn some of that technique. He's going to go inside. But like you said, I like Mike Morris, good fit for the Chargers. I would not mind seeing him at all. Where do you have him? Where would you want him drafted, roughly?
Overall, I mean, I think he's probably a late second round pick. And again, I think that versatility that he brings to the table is what's going to elevate his draft stock a little bit. For everything that we kind of have been back and forth on in terms of his edge production, still had 7 sacks and 21 pressures in 2022. So not the worst type of numbers from someone that you like to see from that size. Again, still good for that, but it's the consistency. It's the lack of pass rush moves that he brings to the table that still need to be developed a little bit more. But again, I think that versatility is really the rocket behind his draft stock as it stands right now. And just watching him go out there, perform as he did in the combine, and then we just had recently his, just going back to his combine. I was totally just going into my next sentence there for a second. I think his athletic traits are well shown. So where you combine that athleticism and his versatility, I have him as a late second round prospect.
Got it. Okay. I will say, moving forward, I think we're going to start getting to guys that are probably going to have more instant production as we go from our 4s through 1s here. Chargers fans should be familiar with this college. Almost every year, it seems, the Chargers are bringing folks in from the one Notre Dame. Team captain Isaiah Foskey comes in at my number 4, Jake. Best fit for the Chargers. And I have an asterisk with his name because I've liked him from the beginning. I think he has really, really good acceleration, strong build. I think he sheds blocks really, really well. I really like his use of leverage that you don't really see often from folks like his size. Also, special teams plus. You see some punt blocks all over the place. Pancakes offensive lineman, which honestly, any defensive lineman that does that, I'm all about. Isaiah Foskey, to me, is kind of a sleeper. Folks are not talking about him enough. 6'5", 260, 11 sacks, 14 quarterback hits, 10 tackles for a loss this past season. I really like Isaiah Foskey. People talk about off the field, I guess on the field too, both his leadership on the field and his overall character as a person. I'm all about his explosiveness. I think that he provides kind of that juice that the Chargers are needing. And as much as I think he can provide stuff now, I think he will get even better as time goes on. Now, does he have all of the tools that you need? No. But again, I'm probably seeing this as a late mid day 2 pick for me. But I really like Isaiah Foskey. He's got it all, man. 4'5", 840, 34-inch vertical for 6'5" human being. Those guys don't grow on trees, Jake.
Length, explosive off the snap, plays with a lot of power. Checks the box of anything that you want from a prototypical edge rusher arsenal that he brings to the table. And Dan, you mentioned pancaking offensive linemen. Go back to the Senior Bowl practices and watch what he does to the Michigan offensive linemen. Just get out of my way and puts him right on his ass. And the best part about that is that literally right after he puts him on his ass, he literally just runs to the back of the line right after that. Doesn't showboat, doesn't do anything. He's like, bam, did my job. I'm gonna run right back around and get
my work here is done.
And did my job. I know you all saw it. I'll just get back here and get ready for the next one. No, Dan, I don't really have much to add from that. I've been a huge fan of Isaiah Foskey's as well. I don't think that he's getting talked about enough, but this is what this edge class is about. Again, we talk about top heavy as far as the names that that are going to go high in this draft, but it's also deep when it comes to just the plethora of talent that is in this edge class. And yeah, maybe some would feel that Isaiah Foskey has been slept on or not talked about enough in this class, but I think if you're talking about in the Chargers type of a situation, an edge 3 scenario, somebody that you're saying to come off the ball to give either Khalil Mack or Joey Bosa just time to take a breath, a guy who can go in there and just pin his ears back and say, go get after the quarterback. This is definitely it. And let's not forget, this is coming from a organization that has a GM that loves them some Notre Dame prospect.
So Need we say more?
So who knows?
Book it. The Notre Dame player going to be picked almost every other year for the Chargers at this point.
That's probably how it's going to go. All
right, Jake, your number 4, the one and only BJ Ojulari. Jake, talk about him. By the way, physical specimen. Talk about that for a second.
Very physical specimen. Yes, indeed. Dan, also one of the youngest players in this draft. He's only 20 years old, but he turns 21 on I believe it's April 5th is when he turns 21.
So he'll actually be able to have a drink at the draft.
Yes, exactly. So that's always a plus. But you talk about just a guy who's dripping in athleticism. And the best part of it is that he takes advantage of it, uses it well, has great speed, burst off the snap. Per Dane Brugler, I'm not sure if you caught this on Twitter, Dan, Ojulari was second in the SEC in pressures per game. So if we're looking for someone who could bring pressure to the quarterback, this is a good name to start with. That's for sure. Now, what's the knock on BJ Ojulari? Doesn't have the best measurables from a size and a weight standpoint, but again, if he were to come in as a rotational edge rusher just to pin his ears back and go, I think his pass rushing arsenal is more than enough to get him some wins. And he has some clips like another edge rusher that we're going to be talking about later, where literally all he needs is one arm. And it's just a one-arm stiff rush.
Very large arm.
To get around the offensive tackle and get to the quarterback. Yes, could he be better in the run game? That's another one of his knocks on him. Sure. But I think when you're talking about a guy like BJ Ojulari and what he brings to the table as far as his skill set goes, I think that he hits every checkbox that you're looking for as far as a guy to say, okay, this is my stand-up edge rusher. This is the guy who I want to come off the line and to say, go get him. He's one of the guys that's probably best fitted to do that in this class. Yes, he's not the most well-rounded. Yes, he doesn't have the best measurables, but at the end of the day, he has enough in his skill set, his arsenal, whether it's his violent hands, his speed, his bend that he brings to the table. He's got enough traits to where he can just get over all of those deficiencies and he can get a number of wins. I love BJ Ojulari in this class.
Yeah, athletic freak, super fast. I love his twitch, very high motor. The guy doesn't stop. Wins with pure athleticism. You mentioned it. But no, I like him too. Probably, I would say second round, maybe early third, but most likely second round is my guess for BJ Ojulari.
And I've seen his draft
all over the place.
All over the place. Some people have had him as a late first.
There's no way.
Which
there's no way.
I don't know.
Compared to some of the other edge guys, honestly, I shouldn't say no way, but
I mean, look, and unless we're talking about a situation where you're probably going to have 7 edge rushers go in the first round, which in this class, look, it's not.
Maybe he goes. I don't know.
It's not outlandish to think about, but I would definitely think more plausible is an early day 2 selection for him.
All right, we're getting into the thick of this, Jake. My third best fit for the Chargers, and I'm going to pray to the heavens that I can say his name correctly this first time. Kansas State, number 91, Felix Anudike Uzomah. How did
it's better? It's better than I would have done, Dan. I'll just tell you that much.
Anudike Uzomah. Jake, of all of the guys that I think I watched, I think he was probably the one that I had like the biggest crush on, of like, nobody talks about him. At least I shouldn't say nobody. Not many people talk about him compared to all the other guys you hear about. But in my opinion, early day 2, this guy's a dream. And also a dream for the Chargers specifically. He's very, very good against double teams, which I think the important part is, you think about the Chargers, they have Khalil Mack, they have Joey Bosa. Like, the double teams are going to come at some point. If he can win against double teams, he'll win against single coverage. Like, I mean, it's not even a challenge. And you watch how amazing he is with his like relentlessness, and he just overpowers tackles constantly. Incredibly strong. One of the strongest guys I see in this class. Really, really good swim move too, by the way. And for as big as he is, like, he's pretty agile. 6'3", 252. Again, so think of like a stockier frame. He's not 6'6" or anything like that, but 6'3", 250, 8.5 sacks, 9 quarterback hits, 8 tackles for loss, 28 tackles. I really, really like kind of his overall portfolio of pass rushing techniques. He kind of has a little bit of everything. His core is extremely strong. Now, is he like specifically, this is kind of one of those tweeners for me. Like, I say this in not a bad way, but think of how Jerry Tillery was drafted to be. Like, that's kind of how I see Felix in this regard, where he has kind of that, I don't want to say tweener, hybrid defensive end, interior defensive line, can kind of do both. I really like Felix. I think he's getting slept on a bit in this class. And if nothing else, I want to see his dance move. I want to see a celebration after every sack he gets. Because it's second to none. I love it.
That was it.
That's it for me.
Why? Because we haven't had an edge rusher that has a dance since the days of Sean Merriman or Sean Phillips, and you want to see that all over again.
I mean, do you consider the Joey Bosa shrug?
Hell, maybe not even the shrug, maybe the teabag move. I mean, I wish that would have become a little bit more regular.
Sean Phillips with the bowling. I mean,
those are all good. I mean, hey, I get your points there. Yeah, one of the things that I actually really liked about him that had nothing to do with the tape that you watch about him, and this was actually tweeted by a friend of the show, Trevor Sikkema, when he was asked at the combine about basically how he approaches rushing the quarterback. Basically just went into detail on when he starts games, as far as his first moves that he does, and then he basically essentially builds out a plan on how he's going to come back with a different move, and then a different move, and then a different move throughout the game. So obviously, high IQ football player, and I really like that approach to the game, because sometimes you get these guys that come in there and they just try to win with one of their best attributes, whether that's speed, whether that's power. And when you get to the NFL level, you need to be a little bit more educated with your pass rush moves. And as far as his hand usage, he's got that. I think that he's very polished and very disciplined with his hand work. Still needs a little bit more work to do when it comes to his overall pass rushing game, but I think that he's already halfway there. And I really would like him, Dan, especially as the conversations have been heating up these last few days, of a trade back scenario. If you were able to trade back to, say, around 29-30, I think this would be a great fit for Felix in this type of scenario. And this is another player who we've seen draft stock fluctuate all over the place. This was a guy who, you ask people a month ago, was maybe the third or the fourth edge rusher being taken. And then now, of course, as we've seen other guys ascend and the draft starting to take more shape as far as team needs goes and after free agency, I've seen drafts with him at the very end of it. I've seen drafts with him not even in the first round anymore. So it's another one where whether he stays in the first round or not, somebody's going to be getting some good talent, whether it's late day 1 or early day 2. But I like what he brings to the table. I do.
All right. We're getting to the big names, or the bigger names, I should say. Jake, you're next on the board here. Talk about him.
All right. I love talking about this player, honestly. Will McDonald, who is not only explosive off the snap, but he's explosive when he's also leaping over SUVs, as was clearly documented at the NFL Combine.
Real or fake?
Oh, I think it was real. Did you see him push off the top? I think that was absolutely legitimate. But for a guy who is 6'4",
wrestling's real too, by the way. Wrestling's real.
Hey, shut up. For a guy who is 6'4", 245 pounds, God, he has freakish athleticism. Mm-hmm. And with 34 and a half inch arms, he's just dripping with athletic ability. Plays with lightning quick hands, shows great ability with his dip and his bend to get around offensive tackles. Very diverse as a pass rusher, much like in the same breath as Felix. He has an arsenal that he can attack with, including a spin move that would make Dwight Freeney smile. And he's made a highlight. He's made a highlight reel out of those. Go ask Darnell Wright out of Tennessee when he had to go up against Will McDonald in the Senior Bowl week. And what I liked about it, Dan, is that he was already up 6 pounds from his combine weight to when he started going through drills during his pro day. And by the way, 6'4", 245, running a 4.66 and a 6.79 3-cone drill. Like, are you kidding me? There is so much to like about Will McDonald. And I kind of go back to our conversation with Trevor Sycamore when it relates to him, because obviously in his latest mock draft, he had the Chargers selecting Will McDonald at 21. At 21. And for some people that may seem a little bit high. Some people would say probably, you could trade back and you could still get him. Honestly, I would totally be fine with the Chargers taking him at 21. I really would. And I think just from the athleticism, the size and speed combination, the pass rush discipline that he comes to the table with, you mean to tell me that you could stack this guy behind Joey Bosa and Khalil Mack? Yes, please. I'll take it. I will take it. The more and more I watch Will McDonald, the more and more I fall in love with him. And I definitely think it's a possibility that he will be there at 21. And I would not be surprised nor disappointed if the Chargers ended up making that selection.
Jake's third best fit for the Chargers at defensive end is Will McDonald out of Iowa State. I agree. Honestly, he just looks like a bona fide edge rusher. Like, you just the optics, you look at him like, yep, that guy belongs in the NFL. Like, it's pretty easy. Love his first step. I don't want to repeat everything he's had. 36-inch vertical is absolutely insane. Was named co-defensive lineman of the year and first team All Big 12 for the 2021 season. I love he has a pretty good repertoire. He just has a bunch of inside and outside moves, pass rush, rushing, counters. Like, he's got it. I think he looks like a bona fide NFL edge player. I think 21, in my opinion, is a little rich. I think they could probably get a better BPA, I guess.
You're not wrong on that.
But I don't talk to player. Like, I like Will McDonald. So, like, I mean, am I going to be upset that the Chargers have him on their team? No. Do I think they could possibly get more from number 21? Yes.
Sure.
All right, Jake. We're getting down to our top two for each of us. Derek Hall, for me, is up there. Honestly, I have him on my top 5. He's number 2 for me in terms of best fits. Again, we're going through 10 players total. I'm taking this one. Derek Hall is not necessarily my overall number 2, but in terms of best fits, Jake and I are switching off. I am taking Derek Hall, and I love what Derek Hall brings. There aren't many guys like Derek Hall in this class. 6'3", 250, so he's not super tall, but man, fast twitch, athletic, compact. Love his instincts. I think he has one of the best instincts in this entire class. I think he'd be really, really good, like edge 3 / like outside linebacker hybrid for the Chargers. Derek Hall, if it's not Felix, Derek Hall might be like the next guy on my like crush list. I think I'm higher on him than most, but in my eyes, I think he's a first round pick. 7 sacks, 7 quarterback hits, 8 tackles for loss, 33 tackles in the season. Again, that doesn't tell the full story in my eyes. I think he's great in both against the rush and the pass. I think he's only going to get better as a pass rusher. And I think he has I think he's well balanced. I think he's got really, really good strength. I think he's pretty quick. I think he's pretty agile. And I think he has it. I think the only question I have is the size. 6'3", 250. Like, could he be a little bit bigger? Maybe. 10-inch hands, though. I mean, sign me up for that. Runs a 4.55 40, 33.5-inch vertical jump. Like, yes, please. I really like him. I have him as a first-round talent. Man, I would love to see him on the Chargers. I would love to see him on the Chargers.
I love the fact that you ended that with the measurables as far as being something that may worry people. And I'm glad that you said that now, because there are other players that we have yet to talk about that are going to have that same argument. There's players that we just talked about, and BJ Ojulari is a little bit undersized, that have that same argument. And you go on to NFL.com, and you can find out that there was a AFC scout that, in regards to Derek Hall's size, basically just dismissing it and said, don't care. He's going to be tough as shit when he gets into that locker room. It's basically what he said.
Sign me up.
Yeah. But Dan, I wanted to bring that up for context, because I know that you see him as a first round talent. And I know when we had Trevor Sikkema here last week, and he was going through, ideal draft scenarios, and he went literally round 1, round 2, round 3. He ended round 3 with the Chargers selecting Derek Hall and having him fall all the way there.
No way. There's no way.
Now, I agree with you, and that's why my reaction was the way that it was on the pod at that very moment when he announced it, because I felt like there was no way that you could tell me that you could get out of round 2 and Derek Hall would still be on the board. So, especially after watching his pro day, his athleticism just really came out, and you mentioned the numbers already. So, yeah, I think there's a little bit more to develop with him. And maybe that's one of the reasons that you don't see a lot of people having him in their first round mocks. But hey, man, this is Dan Wolkenstein's favorite edge rushers as far as the
come at me, bro.
The Chargers. Yeah. So put your favorite edge rushers in the comments below. We want to hear what you guys have to say about this, because I'm sure we're going to be completely different.
And that's okay. And again, we're talking about like best fits. Like, I think what the Chargers defense needs, he's got it. I think he brings juice. I think he brings speed. He brings that physicality and the energy that I think this Chargers team loves and Brandon Staley seeks out. Derek Hall, for me, honestly, like, it's so fun watching him. And I just feel like he would be a great addition to this locker room. I really do. All right, Jake, you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. Your guy.
My guy. I'll tell you, he's a guy I like to watch. He's the guy I like to watch. And I'm not sure. And again, here's another one where prospect-wise, you go back a month, you've potentially seen him in the top 10. Then he's in the teens. Then he's in the late 20s. And maybe I don't understand all of the criticism as it relates to Myles Murphy. And as I watch more and more, and I was nitpicking here and there, and then maybe just the biggest aspect is when you look at the pass rushers in this class, is he the best when it comes to rushing the passer? Not necessarily. But he is one of the most effective run defenders in this entire edge class. And at 6'5", 268, he has the prototypical size for a defensive end that you could ask for in your defense, and was very productive over his college career, finished 2022 with 34 quarterback pressures. So regardless if you want to say that he's not that good at getting the statistical sacks or what you want to judge from getting to the quarterback, still that's good for a guy who quintessentially can't rush the passer. And another thing, Dan, I think is for the fact that you've gone through the combine, gone through the pro day, and we haven't watched really Myles Murphy get out there and show what he could do. And unfortunately, that was due to him tweaking his ankle the night before he was supposed to go out in the combine. So we will know on April 4th what these testing numbers really look for him, because that's when he's holding his own private workout for NFL teams. But getting back to his full arsenal of what he brings to the game. So we mentioned his size already. His size is going to provide him the scheme versatility, as he could play both standing up, hand in the dirt. Again, we go back to what I was saying earlier, much like in the Mike Morris breath, Brandon Staley loves him some versatile defensive linemen, whether it's inside or outside. He plays with terrific length, and has a constant motor. His power is arguably his best trait. 3 highlights that I want to go over here, Dan, that really stood out to me. One, that showcases his power. You go back and you watch the game against NC State, literally bull rushes the left tackle and puts him on his ass before getting to the quarterback. Number 2, to show off his length, he has a rep where he uses just one arm, much like BJ Ojolari, to stiff arm the left tackle all the way back about 5 yards before he ends up getting the sack. Number 3, and this arguably was one of the more impressive ones. Go watch the game against Boston College, because Zay Flowers, one of my favorite players in this draft, takes an end-around handoff from the quarterback, and Murphy is able to get into the backfield and track him and tackle him in the backfield. I don't know a lot of guys that are Myles Murphy size that could catch up and take down Zay Flowers with as quick as he is in the backfield. But again, I go back to the knock on him is that he relies too much on his power in his pass rush. And unfortunately, that doesn't win as consistently as you would like. So a lot of these guys that we have been talking about that have well-disciplined hands, have a multitude of ways to get to the quarterback, Myles Murphy needs to develop more of that. He needs to develop more of that and not simply rely on his power. His power is one of his biggest aspects that he brings to this game. But as time wears on, he's going to have to figure out more ways to get to the QB at the next level.
I honestly don't think he's going to be there at 21. Like, I really don't. I know there's been a lot of kind of ups and downs with him, but like he's kind of one of those like athletic trait guys where he just checks all the boxes. And like, I honestly didn't even put him in my list because I figured he was going to be gone. Like, I didn't even give him a chance. Look, if he's a 21, absolutely. Like, I have no problem with
I'm
that.
glad you mentioned that, Dan, because yeah, it's a totally realistic aspect that Myles Murphy could totally be gone. But I have to fluctuate that. I have to mention this because it fluctuates just like one more person I'm going to talk about in this class that we've seen their draft stock completely all over the place. And depending on how the draft board shakes out, do I see it as a possibility that he could be there at 21? Sure. Realistically, you know what? I'll give it 50%. 50% realistically that he could drop there.
Okay. All right.
Maybe
Jake.
that's just me taking a page out of your book and being optimistic. So sue me.
Maybe. And again, we're not talking about we want to talk about best fits for the Chargers, but we also want to be realistic of like who's actually going to be available for the Chargers at 21.
So the Will Anderson of the world will not be here.
Yes. If you came here looking for them, we're not talking about them because there's just, again, in my opinion, almost as much as Myles Murphy, like they're not going to be there. But Jake was harping on Myles Murphy. I don't want to take away his glory. But yeah, Will Anderson, Tyree Wilson, like keep smoking whatever you're doing if you think they're going to be there at 21 because it's not happening. Jake, for me, I think my best fit for the Chargers, who I think is actually possible for them, Lucas Van Ness from Iowa.
Pause real quick, dude. I just realized I said Tyree Smith. It should have been Tyree Wilson.
That's fine. Just a slip of the tongue.
Sorry.
Whatever.
Just edit that part out after I say Will Anderson's.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Luke and end of Tyree.
Can't believe I just did that.
It's a slip of the tongue. You're fine. Jake, Luke Van Ness out of Iowa. We're getting into the guys that you hear everybody talking about, and for good reason. Luke Van Ness is one of them. I would be all about Luke Van Ness coming to the Chargers at 21.
Talk about a guy who probably won't be there at 21, but go on.
Okay, but do you not see him being there at 21? Like, who has the higher chance of being there? Myles Murphy or Lucas Van Ness? In my eyes, it's Lucas Van Ness.
See, I go the opposite. And I would say that Myles Murphy probably goes before. And you're probably going to get into it here, so I don't want to take away too much of what you're about to talk about with him. But I'll save that till the end of your conversation here. So go on.
All right. So 275, 6'5". In my eyes, I have him as like a late round 1, early round 2. But again, it's all relative. he has kind of that Morgan Fox archetype, in my opinion, where he's just a football player, dude. Like he's just a football playing Jesse, as Brendan Say likes to call.
Yes.
Strong interior presence, strong arms, wins more with like pure motor and physicality than he does with like technique or crazy athleticism. But great against the run, great against the pass, obviously. Sheds blockers really, really well. I think his presence is fantastic. And I think one of the things that the Chargers drastically need is kind of that physical presence on both the end as well as on the interior. Similar to like what a Khalil Mack does. I'm not saying he's Khalil Mack at all, but I'm saying in terms of the physical presence that Khalil Mack is on this football team, Luke Van Ness, in my opinion, is kind of that same style. Again, the stats are going to blow you away. 7 sacks, 9 quarterback hits, 7 tackles for a loss. He didn't even play football to start his career. Like he was playing hockey and wasn't even thinking about football. But then later on, I mean, he just balled out. I don't necessarily know if he has kind of the high IQ that you see from some of these other guys we've talked about. And I don't necessarily know if he has like the biggest repertoire in terms of like his portfolio of pass rushing techniques. But when you have a man who's that strong, who can overpower pretty much everybody, like at some point, to hell with it, you take the player. And so for me, with what the Chargers need, that would provide them both edge depth behind both Mack and Bosa, but also beef up the interior and please God help their run defense. I think Luke Van Ness checks both those boxes.
It's interesting talking about Van Ness, and a lot of people have mentioned this since we basically had started the draft process. But to have the stats that he has when he wasn't even a full-time starter in his own defense is just weird. Ridiculous. It really is ridiculous to see that type of production. Now, some people will obviously knock him for that and say that it's okay. It's more of just, he arrives here, he arrives there, has a splash play, inconsistent, doesn't show up as much as you want to see. I get all that. But in terms of what you want to see from a prototypical edge rusher, Dan, as you had mentioned it, he has those traits. And even as a, let's just call it non-starter on his own defense, I think he also has the stats to back some of that up. And then you go back and you watch what he did through his testing. His athleticism is there. It's just what you would want to, in this type of scenario, let's just say for the Chargers standpoint, as an edge 3 to start off his NFL career. I'm not talking about a team that's looking for an edge 1 here. And I have seen plenty of mocks where the people who were picking had the Chargers selecting Lucas Van Ness. Now, probably this was about a month ago, not recently, because I think his draft stock has elevated a little bit more. So personally, I see him taken somewhere between 11 and 20. I see him definitely going in the teens. And I make that argument again to say just for the talent that is in this edge class and the traits like a player like Lucas Van Ness brings to the table is just going to make teams fall in love with them that much more, because the way that the quarterbacks are playing, especially in the AFC, you need as much help as you can get to the quarterback these days. And Van Ness is one of them. Basically, Dan, what you'd be doing in this type of scenario, and why I love the fit for the Chargers, is you would essentially be taking him as a non-starter that he played in Iowa and putting him in as a non-starter in the Chargers defense and just letting him do what he does best as an edge rusher. So I don't think that the transition would be that difficult for him. And the situation, I think, if in year 1 wouldn't be too difficult for him. And to someone to play the short game and the long game, I think this would be a great fit for them if they were to pull the trigger and select him at 21.
Jake, here we go. Your best fit for the Los Angeles Chargers. And honestly, I think this is both of our best fit for the Los Angeles Chargers, if we're being honest.
This is bittersweet to talk about. I almost hate talking about this because, to Dan's point that he mentioned a few minutes ago, we're talking about guys that are realistically going to be here. Well, obviously, Nolan Smith was a popular name about a month and a half ago.
Yeah,
Saw
prior to the combine, it was
prior to the combine, and we were talking about this with Trevor Sikkema last week, and he had said himself that he doesn't expect him to be there at 21, as much as we would all love for him to be there. Some people, again, this is another player that has had their draft stock be all over the place. Some people thought after his combine that he was a bona fide top 10 pick. Others don't believe that. Others believe that he could fall to the teens. Others believes that he'll be taken in, the early 20s. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But I have said this many times before. Nolan Smith to me is almost the equivalent of what happened to his draft stock to when Von Miller went out and tested. When he was coming out of the draft, Chargers were picking in the teens that year. Plenty of teams had mocked Von Miller to the Chargers at that point in time. And then he went out to the combine and just blew the roof off and skyrockets himself all the way to number 2 overall in his respective draft. Now, is Nolan Smith in that type of mold? Not going to say that. But as far as the athletic traits go, it's hard to argue with something like that.
4.39 40.
Now, a lot of people will say, well, that's because he only weighs, 239 pounds, a little bit undersized, not ideal from what you would like to see at an edge rusher of the next class.
41 and a half vertical jump.
I mean, you could keep spewing all the stats you want to, Dan. I mean, I appreciate it. But in terms of traits, what he brings to you on the field, I mean, number one, he's a great locker room presence, great leader for that Georgia defense. Brandon Staley, again, loving on his Georgia boys here. We have to mention that. But has a great first step as a pass rusher. Shows ridiculous bend and flexibility to get around the tackles. Despite being undersized for the position, plays with a lot of power, possesses a lot of pass rushing tools in his arsenal. Again, as I mentioned, that quick first step, active hands to get around those offensive tackles, his ability to speed rush and defend the run is some of the best that you're going to see in this entire edge class. Now, like I said, I know he's lighter for a player at that position. I know he's coming off the pec injury, but based off of his combine testing and what we saw from him from the pro day, it doesn't seem to be any huge lingering issues. And Dan, read me that 40 again.
4.39. 4.39.
You mean to tell me that he couldn't put on another 10 to 12 pounds? Really? How much slower is that going to make it?
Give him a mid 4.4. That's fine.
Exactly. So what big difference is it really going to make if he puts
He's still
on
faster
size?
Than every receiver on the Chargers starting roster. So
not wrong. So Nolan Smith, is he realistically going to be there? Probably not. I'd be shocked if he made it all the way to 21. If the Chargers really fell in love with him, they would probably have to execute a trade up to go get him.
Please don't do that. Please don't do that.
No, I can't take any more of that.
Please don't.
I cannot take any more of that. Please just don't. The board should fall to you just fine to find a player at 21 that you could take a BPA approach and get out of there with the W. But please don't trade up. Please, I'm begging you. Not this year. You can't afford it this year.
Jake's gonna have a meltdown if he sees you trade up for anybody. It doesn't matter. Nolan Smith, my favorite. 6'2", 240, you mentioned it, but man, the fact that he could be your edge 3 is stupid. Like, talk about upside. Like, I still think he's pretty raw too. And he just, athleticism drips from him. Like, I think he does well against the run and the pass. I think he's really good. He kind of has like I'm trying to think of a player that he reminds me of that sets the edge from a rush defense, but his instincts are great, man. I love what he brings. Obviously lit up the combine. There's no, I think he's got a really good nose for the football too. Like, no moment's too big, and he knows when he has to turn it on. And I think that's important, especially for the edge position. Great in pursuit, has a lot of the quickness, athleticism that you need, fast sideline. Oh, it would be so great to see him on the Chargers. Like, is it a moonshot? Like, I don't know. It's
probably a moonshot right now.
Probably.
Yeah, absolutely.
Probably. But look, this is one of those sprint the cards in if you can do it. Happy as a clam if the Chargers can do this. That's our top 5 best fits for the Chargers at the edge position. Again, total of 10 players we gave you. That's a total of 5 for each of us. Jake, let's put each other on the spot here for a couple minutes. Chargers 21. At 21, which edge would you predict they take?
Well, if you can hear, Tom Telesco just faxed me the answer to that question.
Beep, 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 beep,
Yeah.
beep, beep.
Yeah. Apparently it's 3 pages long.
Oh,
so
okay.
It's a very lengthy answer.
It's probably Felix. That's a really long name.
Edge at 21, they don't move, they don't trade back, they stay at 21. And you're talking most realistic scenario that's going to be there. I kind of have to bring it back to Will McDonald. I do.
I think it's Van Ness.
I mean, and you wouldn't be wrong in that scenario either, because I could see a situation to where he is possibly going to be available at 21. I still think people are going to value him a little bit higher, though, and that he's already going to be off the board. But if I was to be completely realistic, whether it's at 21 or even a situation where the Chargers could trade back a few spots, I think Will McDonald has kind of solidified that sweet spot, early 20s. And that would be a great contribution as far as an edge 3 goes to match up with Joey Bosa, Khalil Mack, and hey, possibly Kyle Van Noy if he returns.
I wouldn't mind that at all. That's our defensive end / edge rankings. Again, best fits for the Chargers. Our opinions, you guys can tell us we're wrong all day. We're cool with that. What are your top 5 picks or wishes for the Chargers at defensive end? Let us see it in the comments.
I know we got some people that comment on this show, not only just regularly, but lengthy. I want someone to give me just their rundown, rounds 1 through 7. Just give me all your edge rushers, because I know that a lot of you guys are just complete draft nerds when it comes to that stuff. So I want to see that.
Yes,
I'm just kidding. Don't overdo that. Give me your top 5.
I mean, if you want to. I mean,
if you want to go ham, by all means, more power to you. I would love to see that. But tell us in the comments. Give us your top 5. What do you think as far as the edge rushing situation with this draft class?
We've only got a couple, 4 weeks until draft begins? 4 weeks. So obviously we got some catching up to do with these position rankings, best fits for the Chargers. Dick, what's our next position we're going to be tackling?
Dan, kind of a position that we haven't talked about a lot, and it's because of the Chargers' current situation with the players that they have at their roster that we don't talk about it. But you can't knock it. And you can't get around the fact that Brandon Staley loves him some corners. And depending on how the draft board falls at 21, we can't entirely take out corner from that conversation either. So we're going to go through our top 5 best fits at the cornerback position. And I tell you that this is going to be a lot of fun. And yes, it's going to not include a number of different players because the top end of this cornerback class is ridiculous. So this one will be a very interesting one.
I love talking corners. This is my favorite. All right, for Jake Hefner, you can find him at Jake D. Hefner, myself at Dan W Sports. Thank you so much for watching Chargers Unleashed. Again, make sure to hit that like and subscribe. We love doing these with you guys. It's a lot of fun. Love the collaboration. Love the feedback. Tell us what you think. Tell us what you'd like to see. Again, you can find us on YouTube. Obviously, if you're watching, you know that already. Hit the subscribe button. Find us everywhere you find your podcasts. Thank you so much. We'll talk to you next time on Chargers Unleashed.